Well, hey everyone, this is Kim at The Able Gardener. I came out to see if I had any squash ready to be harvested, and actually I have quite a few squash. I probably have picked 6 zucchini squash today and about 5 acorn squash. So the squash is all coming into season for me now, and of course this is my second planting. The first planting of my garden got totally wiped out with the hailstorm. So my second planting has now come to where I'm starting to harvest some of my vegetables. Now it's only been about a month and a half since I started planting seeds again to get my second garden going. So let me just take you on a little tour of what's been going on in my garden in the last month and a half and how much it's grown. It's just really gone crazy, which is great for me because I really wanted to have a garden this year. And fortunately for me, I live in an area where I have a really long growing season. So let me get with it, take you guys around the garden and show you what's growing. Now back behind the chase tree, I put a trellis up against the wall and it's got some sugar snap peas along the fence. They're not doing that well. Something's eating on them, but I'm gonna have to spray them with something and get them cleaned up so I can have some more peas to eat. Now squash down here in this one garden bed, it may look like I've overplanted, but actually this is just 4 squash plants. They're just really growing well and they're very healthy. Over in the first bed, I do have tomatoes that have come back up. I've got sunflowers, cherry tomatoes, eggplant, and a couple of different kinds of peppers. Now here at the end of the bed, I planted a couple of tomatoes in 10-gallon pots. And what I'm trying this year is to grow a couple of tomatoes in the pots and have the pot as a hugelkultur. So down here at the bottom of the pots, I put in some larger sticks and some rotting material. And then as I came up, I put wood chips and mulch. And at the very top, I just have soil. So both of these are growing in a hugelkultur pot. Now, these are both doing fine. They're putting on tomatoes and they look okay. They just don't look as well as the tomatoes that I have in the garden bed, where they can stretch out in that good soil and go down with their roots as far as they want. I'm not sure how this is going to work out with the hugelkultur pots, but I'll let you guys know at the end of the season how they did and what their root mass looks like. Anyway, let's get on with the rest of the garden. In my second bed over here, peppers, lemongrass, eggplant, and then I put up a trellis, which I'll show you in a minute, and that is for Munchkin pumpkins. So I've gotten probably 8 Munchkin pumpkins off my vines. They're putting on more. Let me show you what they look like because they're just so cute. Now this is the back of my garden bed where I put a trellis and I planted, I believe, 5 or 6 Munchkin pumpkin plants. Now, because they're Munchkin pumpkins, I guess I thought the plants would be small too, but these plants have just outdone themselves, and it's not really the right place to put a lot of vines under here with my tomatoes and my eggplants because they're not getting a lot of sun now. But look at these guys, they are just so cute. Everyone should grow some of these little Munchkin pumpkins. These guys are just perfect for fall, especially if you have kids. They're a great little decorating item for your table at Thanksgiving, and the kids just love to come out and pick them. Now in my long middle bed, I've got 2 tomatoes, and those I had left in there after the storm. They just look like a couple little sticks, but I left them in to see what they would do, and this is what they've done. So they're all tied up now. What I'm going to have to do is some major trimming on all of my tomato plants, and then get the rest tied up. Got a lot of green tomatoes that I'm just waiting for them to ripen. I've got some Thai chilies I'll show you in a minute. Some Swiss chard that I had in there after the storm. Didn't really hurt the Swiss chard for some reason. And then I put in probably 25 to 30 bush beans, and they're just starting to produce beans. So we had beans yesterday and the day before, and we may have beans again tonight. Now here are my Thai chilies down here at the end of the bed. And what you see right here is what's left after I did a major harvest this morning. I just really cut the Thai chilies off of these 2 plants. So what's here needs to just ripen some more, get a little bigger, and then I'll be harvesting these guys too. Now my bush beans down at the end, like I had said, I believe I planted 25 to 30 bush beans in here, and I believe these are called Provider. I've planted those before, but for the last couple years I've done string beans, but now I'm back to the bush beans. Back against the fence, I do have 4 tomato plants. I went to town and I got some transplants and put them in so I would have some tomatoes right away. And I believe this one on the end is a Better Boy, and then there's a Celebrity, and then a beefsteak. And then the very end tomato is one that I planted, It's one of my very first transplants. And what that is a currant tomato, where the tomatoes are about the size of a pencil eraser. They're not much bigger than that. So let's go take a look at those little guys. Here are the little currant tomatoes. They're not going to get much bigger than that. They just need to turn red, and then the grandkids can come over and pick them. Because my fingers are not that small and I can't handle picking these little tiny tomatoes. And then at the end, more green tomatoes just needing to ripen. Down at one of my end beds, I've got a lot of cucumbers planted down here along a construction mesh. And there's a nice cucumber right there I can pick tomorrow. Now all these cucumbers on this end are called straight eights. And then down at the other end are lemon cucumbers. And I love to make sweet and sour pickles out of lemon cucumbers. They're just so good. Now, once again, in this inbox, I have more tomatoes, and it's a really good thing that we like that many tomatoes because I'm just going to be inundated with tomatoes here in another, 2 or 3 weeks. Now, my chayote is doing really well. I've got a construction mesh on the top of my slat roof up here, or my trellis, and it's starting to grow up and grow over that construction mesh. So all I have to do now is get out here with a ladder, and some of this that is hanging over the back, I need to get it thrown over the top. But other than that, it's doing great. It's growing really well. And at the end of the summer, I will have this entire trellis just covered with chayote plants. Well, now that we've looked at almost everything that's in the backyard garden, and that would contain 8 garden beds, 4 by 8, all of this that I planted from seed after the storm came, that was about 45 to 55 days ago. This is how much growth I've gotten in my garden in that amount of time. Well, let's take a look up front and see what's growing up there. Up on the left, we've got a volunteer pumpkin coming up. And then behind that, we had potatoes that the storm wiped out. I went ahead and put some tomatoes in that were Roma tomatoes. I didn't know if they'd make it or not, but they not only made it, they've grown and now they're laying across the ground, and I need to make a trellis to pick those up. Over by the driveway, we planted a lot of zinnias. And one thing I think is funny is out of all the colors I had of zinnias last year, this year almost all of them came up pink. Now they're not exactly the same color of pink, but they're very close, and most of them are just exactly the same. And down further along the fence, I planted a multi-flower sunflower, and those are really pretty when they first come up. They're standing tall and they have all the little sunflowers on them. Down here, some more squash. Now over where I had my giant pumpkins planted, they did die about a month and a half ago. I planted squash, pumpkins, and gourds. And that's all in there, all those different gourds. Squash I can see laying on the ground over here, and I do have one fairly large pumpkin in there somewhere. My peach tree is just covered with peaches. So even with the storm coming, the hail hitting the peaches, me taking peaches off of here that have been hit and bruised by the hail, I still have a tree that's just covered with peaches, and I see a lot of peach cobbler in my future. Let's go back in the backyard. Well, you guys, I think I took just a little bit too long because the sun's starting to go down. So I just thought I'd shoot you a view of my perennial garden. It was just battered after that storm. I keep on mentioning the storm, but everything was battered by the storm. But look at it now, it's come back. Everything's growing just amazingly. I've got beautiful flowers. I've got sunchokes, comfrey, basil, you name it. Everything's planted back here in the perennial garden. The bees are doing great. I do have a video that's just a bee update that you guys will see after this one. But as for the perennial garden and everything else, everything's growing great. And you know what? As upset as I was with that storm that came through, it's as if it didn't even happen now. Everything looks beautiful, green, and I'm starting to harvest food, which is really great. So thanks for joining me on this little tour of my garden this afternoon and tonight, and I'll be talking to you guys later. God bless you guys. Bye-bye.